I said one of these days you're gonna catch a cold with nothing on. You said all that you needed was my love to keep you warm. Stop taking Polaroid pictures, said the memories are good enough. You always knew the right words to say when the hard times got tough. Staring at me wide-eyed, my love for you was multiplied. Honey, go careful with my heart. I said, I wish I could buy you things and build you a better home. You said all that you needed was my love to keep you strong. Staring at me wide-eyed, my love for you is multiplied. Honey, go careful with my heart. Staring at me wide-eyed, my love for you is multiplied. Honey, go careful with my
Slept on my neck, now it's stiff, immobile. Kinda like when I said I was leaving you. I won't move, I won't budge, no, I'll leave you here. Shut my eyes, had a grudge, covered up my ears. Now wait, now wait, now I leave you here. Now wait, now wait, now I leave you here. No, I said for the best, now and dance with regret. Miss your lips, miss your laugh, miss the way you slept. So get out, oh get out of my head. Miss your toes, miss your legs, miss your everything. Now wait, now I
아니야?
채 썰어요.
아니 채를 왜 그렇게 썰어?
새-
아니 반으로 잘라.
네.
그리고 좀 반 자르고 반 자르고 이렇게 탁탁탁탁.
아, 오케이.
I just caught the wave, and it's I know we pushed it out to the limit, and I know I won't give you up for a minute. If it's alright, if it's alright, maybe we just got lost in the madness. Could we let go and forgive everything and make it alright? And it's alright. Your hands feel cold. And your heart, is your heart still holding on? 'Cause I just caught the wave, I just caught the wave in your eyes. I just caught the wave, I just found a way, and it's alright. I know we pushed it out to the limit, and I know I won't give you up for a minute. If it's alright, if it's alright, maybe we just got lost in the madness. Could we let go and forgive everything and make it alright? And it's alright. Street lights glow now, so let's find a way home. Street lights glow now, and it's alright, and it's alright, and it's I just caught the wave, I just caught the wave in your eyes. I just caught the wave, I just caught
참기름 넣나? 참기름?
the wave. Heartache sends around the world. I can't kick the feeling.
아니 그 전에도 괜찮았다니까.
맛이 나왔어.
Somebody show me how again. My century's bleeding, but this one I still believe in. Love and hope never die. No, come on, sing us, you and I. All this noise and the apathy, the wheels gotta punch it. Belief in a modern alchemy, the world's technicolor, so love rested.
와 진짜 맛있겠다.
맛있을 것 같은데?
치즈 어디 갔어? 치즈 여기 있지 않았냐?
치즈? 치즈 여기. 아 이거 아닌가? 이거잖아.
Love and hope nothing's that bad. We can go soon as your parents get back. But I've been a wreck. A lake in the mountains could help me reset. A sky full of stars, heaven arranged us to be where we are. But hell, I'm afraid, 'cause being without you is sounding okay. You call me up, I hate the way you point out my vices. I hate the way you put me in crisis. Don't want you, don't need you, but most of all, I won't go, baby. Won't go, baby. I won't go, baby. Won't go, baby. I won't go, baby. I won't go, baby. Won't go.
유명한 잡채야?
아, 맛있어 보여.
야 잡채 맛있는데?
안 먹어봤잖아.
학교급식 잡채 맞나?
Won't go, baby. Won't go, baby. I won't go, baby. Won't go, baby. I won't go, baby. Won't go, baby. Nothing's the same. I don't need to see you when I'm in LA. I'd rather be home. And amazing at being alone. Yeah. Leaning on friends, forgetting the reason this ever began. 'Cause empathy's hard when you're leaving everyone with scars. You call me up, I hate the way you point out my vices. I hate the way you put me in crisis. Don't want you, don't need you, but most of all, I won't go, baby. Won't go, baby. 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 I won't go, baby. Won't go, baby.
아 이런 걸 왜 만들어가지고
그래 임마 배부른데.
진짜 잘 먹는다.
김치 살짝 넣어가지고.
I've been running circles for you. I've been catching feelings for two. Underneath the lies I saw your truth. And I don't give a fuck about anything else. I don't wanna talk about anyone else. I just wanna walk around being myself, being myself. With you I'm not lonely. With you I'm secure. So what you want from me? Is this the cure? 'Cause I can be hot for days on you. And we can get hot for days for sure. 'Cause I can be hot for days.
김치 맛이 나는 치즈밥 같은 느낌?
난 치밥 좋아하니까.
Hot for days for sure. We used to be numb, looking for a feeling, drugs, painting on the ceiling. What is it all revealing? With you I'm not lonely. With you I'm secure.
자 이제 치울까? 야 그만 먹자.
아,
적당히 먹어라.
아 저거 그만 먹. 아 저거 그만.
'Cause I can be hot for days on you. And we can get hot for days for sure. 'Cause I can be hot for days on you. And we can get hot for days for sure. you I'm secure. 'Cause I can be hot for days on you. And we can get hot for days for sure. 'Cause I can be hot for days on you. And we can get hot for days for sure.
Words in your message trouble me into the night. So my reflection written down in every line. Wasn't easy to believe that I did that to you. You were needing something deeper, I think I always knew. And I can see everything now. Awake in your heart, but buried my deep on.
나 이거 짠할 때 한번 먹어볼게요. 짠할 때.
What you show me is better till I've ever since stumbled in the dark. And I can see everything now. It wasn't for nothing. I think about you every time. I'm caught in the open, looking for a place to hide. Wasn't easy to believe that I did that to you. You were needing something deeper, I think I always knew. And I can see everything now. Awake in your heart, but buried my deep underground. What you show me is better till I've ever since stumbled in the dark. And I can see everything now. Can you feel it? Now we can breathe again. Found the meaning. Now we can breathe again. Can you feel it? Now we can breathe again. Found the meaning. Now we can breathe again. And I can see everything now. Awake in your heart, but buried my deep underground. What you show me is better till I've ever since stumbled in the dark. And I can see everything now.
To be young and in love in New York City. Do not know who I am, but still know that I'm good long as you're here with me. To be drunk and in love in New York City. Midnight into morning coffee, burning through the hours talking. Damn, I like me better when I'm with you. I like me better when I'm with you. I knew from the first time I'd stay for a long time. 'Cause I like me better when I'm with you.
up in this bed next to you. Swear the room, yeah, got no ceiling. If we lay, let the day just pass us by. I might get to too much talking. I might have to tell you something. Damn. I like me better when I'm with you. I like me better when I'm with you. I knew from the first time I'd stay for a long time. Cause I like me better when I like me better when I'm with you. Stay with me. Stay a while, oh. Stay a while, stay with me. Lay here with me. I like me better when I'm with you. I like me better when I'm with you. I knew from the first time I'd stay for a long time. Cause I like me better when I like me better when I'm with you.
서로의 첫인상은 어땠나요? 서로 첫인상 뭔가 뭐
자,
지금 생각하는 뭐 서로의 첫인상인 거지 어떻게 보면은.
허비 형은 그때 뭐지 냉장고에 있는 도시락 챙겨줬었어.
자기 먹기 싫다고.
태양이 딱 보고 이제 왜 그래 좋게 만들어가고 있는데 형님 뭐라고 하네. 먹기 싫다. 아 그때 조금 도시락 질리긴 했어.
Through the night, all the lights are passing by us. You decide you're not holding on to my love. I've been wrong more than twice, but I keep on falling back and forth without a clue. Yeah, I know what is right, yet I still ignore it. Finding my way back to you. Save me from all of the things I've done lately. I'm lost. Save me from all that I've become till I become yours. Save me from all of the things I've done lately. I'm lost. Save me from all that I've become till I become yours. Too damn hard to say goodbye. Keep wanting more for you and I. All these dreams caught in my mind, in my mind. I've been wrong more than twice, but I keep on falling back at a clue.
준영은 좋은 말 해줍니다. 준영은
좋은 말 담다.
예쁜 말 담당. 진영? 야, 진영은 야, 낚시꾼이라고 하시죠. 낚시꾼.
낚시꾼 담당?
야, 우리 한 달에 한 번밖에 안 다녀. 두 달에 한 번.
아니요, 오늘도 저보고 낚시 가자고 했습니다.
그래, 인사 치매야 그냥. 밥 먹었냐? 이런 뜻이야 그냥.
자 석신이 형. 자 끝이야?
낚시꾼 끝이야?
자 낚시꾼.
오케이, 좋아. 휴가는
Save me from all that I've become till each other. I helped you out of a broken place. You gave me comfort, but falling for you was my mistake. I put you on top, I put you on top. I claimed you so proud and openly. And when times were rough, when times were rough, I made sure I held you close to me. So call out my name, call out my name when I kiss you so gently. I want you to stay, I want you to stay. Even though you don't want me, girl, I can't you wait? Girl, why can't you wait till I fall out of love? Won't you call out my name? Girl, call out my name and I'll be on my way and I'll be on my. I said I didn't feel nothing, baby, but I lied. I almost cut a piece of myself for your life.
내 피로가 풀린다. 이게
그러면
감동
약간
포인트 아닌가?
힐링 뭐
그렇지.
You just wasted my time. You're on top. I put you on top. I claimed you so proud. And oh, believe me. And when times were rough, when times were rough, I made sure I held you close to me. So call out my name, call out my name, baby. So call out my name when I kiss you so gently. I want you to stay, I want you to stay, I want you to stay. Even though you don't want me, girl, why can't you wait? Girl, why can't you wait till I? Girl, why can't you wait till I fall out of love, baby? Call out my name, say call out my name, girl, call out my name and I'll be on my way, girl, I'll be on my.
전 이거 전
Anytime is a time. Anytime for you to get my call, baby. Sorry, baby. Sorry you alone, baby. Baby, I'll pick up your phone, baby. Whoa, can you try me, try me, try me, try me? Once you put your pride aside, you can notify me, find me, find me, find me. You're the best I ever had, baby girl. Remind me, remind me. Let me know if it's on. You know where to find me, find me. Having thoughts you never had.
다들 약간 저한테 수식어를 뭐 노력형이다 혹은 뭐 부지런하다 한결같다 뭐 이런 얘기를 많이 하셨었잖아요. 근데 난 오히려 이 수식어 진영이 제일 잘 맞는 것 같아. 물론 난 이거는 멤버들 다
쳐다보지 마.
똑같다고 생각하지만
쳐다보지 마. 이거 지금 빨리 딴 데 쳐다봐.
Wait, if you let me, don't you tell me you're looking grown since the last time I looked at you. It might have been about a couple months, but I just got the picture that you texted to me. You ain't steady, you look ready to go all the way. If you let me take you down, oh, can you try me, try me, try me? Once you put your pride aside, you'll find me, you're the best I ever had. Baby girl, remind me, let me know if it's find me, having thoughts you never had. Yeah, try me. Once you put your pride aside, you know find me, you're the best I ever had. Baby girl, remind me, let me know if it's find me, having thoughts you never had. Yeah. Baby, try me. Don't you mash me.
그럼 그때 저 진짜 형 제가 그때 대단하고 하지 않았어요 그때 형한테. 저한테 대단하다 이러면서 왜 하는 거예요?
정국이가 하길래.
전 이거
늘 경건하게 내 할 일을 합니다.
There's so many stars in the sky. There's only one that shines for me. There's so many.
정국이가 되게 저랑 다른데 이 대단하다고 생각을 하는데 되게 나쁜 일이 있어도 하루면 잊고 뭐 어느 정도 나쁜 일이 있으면 한 30분 정도 지나면 잊고 그런 타입인데 정국이는 계속 과거를 보면서 내가 이랬고 여기서 못했고 뭐 그런 데에서 계속 뒤를 돌아보면 성장을 하더라고요.
Rose. And as the sun sets in our town, 'cause baby you gave me my crown. Oh, looking back, yeah, I will wait for you.
그런 의미에서 저랑 되게 다르게 생각을 하고 있는데 뭐 정국이 뭐 그래서 대단하다고 생각을 합니다.
'Cause if heaven had a face it'd be yours. 'Cause if heaven had a face it'd be yours. If heaven had a face it'd be yours. 'Cause if heaven had a face it'd be yours. You may be gone for now, but time will take its toll. It's true, I made the vow, but seasons come and they go. 'Cause every flower must die. My dear, my pet to
echoes cry. And as the sun sets in our town, 'cause babe, you gave me my crown. Oh, looking back, yeah, I will wait for you. Yeah, I've made my track, and I'll be here for years. 'Cause if heaven had a face, it'd be yours. 'Cause if heaven had a face, it'd be yours. If heaven had a face, it'd be yours. 'Cause if heaven had a face, it'd be yours. Oh, looking back, yeah, I will wait for you. And yeah, I've made my track, and I'll
느끼면서 사는 사람인데 서운함은 그렇게까지 크게 그냥 그럴 수도 있다라는 생각을 해가지고 서운한 거 딱히 뭐 진영한테 뭐 딱 없는 것 같아요.
be yours. If heaven had a face, it'd be yours. 'Cause if heaven had a face, it'd be yours.
정국이한테 뭐 서운했던 저는 뭐 서운했던 점 미안했던 점이 뭐 잘 기억이 안 나는데 굳이 꼽자면 뭐 한 2년 반쯤 전이었나요? 3년 전쯤이었나요? 저희 모두 다 같이 힘들 때 정국이가 대화를 시도를 안 하려고 했을 때 저는 그때 대화를 조금이라도 더 했으면 좋았을 텐데라고 생각했었는데 결국 대화를 했잖아요. 근데 그 당시에는 조금 서운했어요. 대화 좀 해주지.
아 저도 서운했어요.
왜 안 해줄까? 담아두고 얘기를 안 하니까.
Oh, how it burns my eyes. Oh, looking back, yeah, I will wait for you. And yeah, I made my track, and I'll be here for years. 'Cause if heaven had a face, it'd be yours. 'Cause if heaven had a face, it'd be yours. If heaven had a face, it'd be yours. 'Cause if heaven had a face, it'd be yours.
이거 얘기했었나?
뭐?
그래도 비 오는 날
Oh, looking back, yeah, I will wait for you here. And yeah, I've made my track, and I'll be here for you. 'Cause if heaven had a face, it'd be yours. If heaven had a face, it'd be yours.
너 어디야 이랬는데 모르겠어요. 그래서 정국이 보고 야 너 형이 데리러 갈 테니까 너 어딘지 얘기해 이러니까. 그
아저씨
그리고
우는 손님이
정국
Folks around when they're playing the anthems of rape culture loud, crude and proud, creatures baying. All I've ever done is hide from our times when you're near me, honey, when you kill the lights and kiss my eyes. I feel like a person for a moment of my life, but you don't know what hell you put me through. To have someone kiss the skin that crawls from you, to feel your weight in arms I'd never use. It's the God that heroin prays to. It feels good, girl, it feels good. It feels good, girl, it feels good. It feels good, girl, it feels good. Oh, to be alone with you. There are questions I can't ask. Now at last, the worst is over. See the way you hold yourself, real against your body's borders. I know that you hate this place, not a trace of me would argue, honey, we should run away. Oh, someday, our baby and her mama and the damaged love she made. But I don't know what else that I would do than try to kiss the skin that crawls from you, then feel your weight in arms I'd never use. It's the God that heroin prays to. It feels good, girl, it feels good. It feels good, girl, it feels good. It feels good.
전 멤버들 자식 보고 싶어요.
야이씨
아니 그러니까 그냥
태웅이 말 뜻을 번역하면 이거지. 한 20년 후에도
나도 20년
그래, 20년 후에도 애들
그러니까 지금
같이
자식을
보고.
보고 싶다는.
No, no. I look and stare so deep in your eyes. I'm touching you more and more every time. When you leave, I'm begging you not to go. Call your name 2 or 3 times in a row. It's such a funny thing for me to try and explain how I'm feeling, and my pride is the one to blame. 'Cause I know I don't understand how your love can do what no one else can. You got me looking so crazy right now. Your love has got me looking so crazy. You got me looking so crazy right now. Your touch just got me looking so crazy right now. You got me hoping you'll page me right now. Your kiss, you got me hoping you'll save me right now. Looking so crazy in love. You got me looking so crazy in love.